Good afternoon, and welcome to the Lethbridge City Council meeting for Tuesday, January the 26th, 2021. I'm going to begin with the Acknowledgement Statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We'll now move on to bouquets. We'll start with Councillor Morrow. Councillor Morrow, do you have any bouquets? Councillor Crowson?
None from me, thank you.
Councillor Higgin?
Not for me, thanks.
Councillor Parker?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro?
I have nothing today, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Carlson?
Nothing, Your Worship, thank you.
Councillor Campbell?
I have nothing today either, thank you.
Councillor Kaufman?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, I have nothing either, so we'll move on. We'll do a roll call now. Make sure all the councillors are online.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Kaufman.
Present.
Councillor Crowson.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Morrow. I see him there on Teams. Councillor Parker.
Here.
Acting Mayor Higgin.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Aye.
Mayor Spearman.
Here.
Councillor Campbell.
Present.
And Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. And also in the chamber, we have Mayor Spearman, we have City Manager Dalton, we have Director Adair, we have Director Vanden Heuvel, we have Communications Advisor Nick Cool, we have Director Hawkins joining us as well, and we have myself and Mr. Westerson and Ms. Brown from Clerks. Online, we have City Treasurer Pinkson on Teams and City Solicitor Lowen as well. Thank you.
Because Shaw messed up and they haven't got us brought in yet. So.
Shaw, who do the live video, need another 5 minutes before we proceed. So we'll have a momentary delay for 5 minutes so they can get the recording underway.
We'll be coming back online in here a moment, everyone.
Okay, we're ready to go. So now we're at the consent agenda. You have a resolution for me? I have a resolution from Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Be resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held on Tuesday, January the 12th, 2021 be approved, and the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the minutes of the public hearing held Tuesday, January 12th, 2021 be approved, and the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that Council received for information the status of directed resolutions, January 26th, 2021, with the following amendments. That Council refer the item rescindment of Pathway 24 6 Mile Park from Capital Improvement Project D11 Pathway System Connections and Extensions to the March 4th, 2021 meeting of the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee, and defer the date to Council of the defer the date to Council to March 23rd, 2021, meeting of City Council. And that Council defer the date of return of the item 11.3, Boards, Commissions, and Committees matter, out of closed session on November 30th, 2020, to the February 9th, 2021 meeting of City Council. And further be it resolved that City Council received for information the following reports. The Procurement Summary Report for December 2020, the Operational Review Implementation Plan Update, and Monthly Council Work Plan Update for January 2021. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Is Deputy Mayor Miyashiro speaking?
Council.
Council, can you hear it all?
Yes, we can. I'm not
Yes.
certain Councillor Miyashiro could, which is why he was talking to Councillor Campbell while the mayor was speaking.
Hey, Councillor Miyashiro, you've just sponsored the consent motion resolution. Would you like to speak to that? Okay, I haven't, we'll take the questions until we can get communication reestablished with Councillor Miyashiro. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I just have a question about 2.6, the monthly council work plan update.
Go ahead.
And I've just had a few questions from community members regarding presenting to council with the new SPC model. And I just wanted to make sure that I brought this up and that it could be discussed, as there's could be others that have similar questions. And the main questions that have been coming in have been around presenting to SPC. If somebody has a concern, they'll be guided to an SPC group to look at their concern or to hear them out. Now, I've also heard that, well, I want to present to all of council. It's my understanding that the SPC will take that question or concern or whatever it may be to council, and that every one of those questions, concerns, etc., will go to council. Is that not correct? I'm not sure who can answer that for me and for the public.
Let's see if Councillor Croson can answer that question.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Councillor Higgin, for the question. The purpose of the SPCs is to make us more strategic at council. So any question people have should go first to an SPC, and then the SPC can determine if that is within their prerogative or to be sent on to council. So the first thing people would like to do is contact the correct SPC. We are trying to ensure that conversations are had more than one, so they happen at the SPC level and if necessary then at council level. So that's where people should begin. The city manager always has the prerogative, if anything comes up very quickly, to take things directly to council meetings and work around an SPC in that matter. So that's where we stand. If possible, things should go to SPCs.
Okay, so the reason that that was asked was that if there's 3 or 4 members on an SPC, I guess there's 4 of us on an SPC, and if those members decide that it shouldn't go forward, but maybe there's other members of council that find that that is okay, they may never get the opportunity to make that decision. Then is what you're saying?
No, you'll note that we have built into every SPC the opportunity for any member of council to come to an SPC meeting, even if they're not a member of that SPC, and be involved in the discussion, in the conversations at any SPC. They can't vote, but they can be involved. And we built that in deliberately so that any member of council could be part of any discussion they wish to be part of course. And it would be up to the SPC to take into consideration the conversations of their colleagues to recognize if something should be going on to council.
And sorry, I'm just to continue on there then. So if unless we go to every single one, we may not know what is there. So I guess the idea is to attend each and every SPC, which is, I guess, is fine to do, but you still don't have a vote to push it through to council unless the SPC members decide on that, is what I'm understanding.
That is true, though remember that the agenda comes out a week before any SPC, so you can look at the agenda and determine whether or not you wish to attend, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. My camera might go off because I'm split screening here, but a couple of questions. First, regarding the 2.4, the procurement summary. 2 questions from the procurement summary for the city manager or designate. The first one is food depackaging equipment for organics process, COL 20-119. 608,000. First of all, the funding source is CIP 2018-2027 E7, which is actually deals with cell closure. It doesn't seem to deal anything with the MRF or curbside recycling. So just a little bit of an explanation about what that is and the fact that it's organics. Council's not moved in that direction yet, but I do see this as ICI related. I would appreciate a bit of background on that.
Yeah, just this is Mr. Hawkins, Councillor Kaufman. The E7 was in fact amended, I believe, back in, I'm just trying to find a date here. June of 2019, and we described to council at the time that amendment was occurring, that in order to meet our ICI waste diversion targets, one of the things we were going to need to do is enhance the existing compost facility out there at that time, or at this time, and so that amendment included, and unfortunately the narrative wasn't amended to make it super clear that as part of that project, this was in fact where some of the funding was going to come in order to make that ICI strategy project happen. The depackaging equipment is an enhancement to our composting operation so that it makes it easier for the ICI sector to direct organic material to us, and that we can handle it, remove the waste material, the packaging material, and then compost it at that location. Yeah, I think there was a miss at the time in June of describing the fact that would be the source of funding, E7, at the time that we amended the CIP the last time.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to recall, I think looking at the CIP, there was no expenditure slated for 2021. So I'm assuming that you're just moving funds forward that were unexpended in 2020.
That's correct. We are working to that budget, E7, and we have sufficient money, again, based on some surpluses from the actual cell development that was originally proposed as part of E7 in order to make this enhancement on the compost facility.
Okay, thank you. Second question, also on the procurement report. COL 20-209, Legacy Park Contract Resolution and Pump House Reconstruction. Now, I do recall a previous conversation about the fact that we were having some challenges with supplier or a contractual agreement. The question is, why are we spending $44,000 to resolve that if that's a contract dispute?
It is correct. You're correct, Councillor Kaufman. We're still in dispute with the original general contractor at that location. There is some additional engineering that's required in order to completely scope what the repair is based on the failure we had at the irrigation pump house. At this particular point, we have an uncooperative contractor, but we have a park that needs a proper irrigation system, so we are incurring these expenses, recognizing that we intend to recover these additional costs as well as the deficiencies associated with the failure itself from the contractor.
Thank you. Final question, if I can, Mayor Spearman.
Go ahead.
Just switching files here, sorry. On the operational review implementation plan to the city manager, just noticing, is it the operational review or is it the work plan? Airport governance, that must have been on work plan. Do you have a timeline for, I see that the SWOT analysis has been complete. Do you have a timeline for hopefully getting that in front of council?
Yes, as soon as possible. We have to get back in front of the committee. But the work on governance has been completed. It just needs to move through the committee to council.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Okay, thank you. There's no more questions on the consent agenda. I'll go back to the mover. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you. Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There's none. We'll now move on to adoption of the agenda. I have a motion from Acting Mayor Higgin that the agenda of the regular meeting of City Council on January 26, 2021 be adopted as presented, including all communications as submitted by the City Clerk. City Clerk, are there any amendments?
Yes, Mayor Spearman, there are two additions to the agenda, and that would be to the in-camera section. 10.4, COVID-19 meeting protocols, that's a verbal, and 10.5, legal update, that's also a verbal. Thank you.
Thank you. So now the resolution will read that the agenda of the regular meeting of City Council on January 26, 2021 be adopted as amended, including all present communications as submitted by the City Clerk. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Are there any opposed? I see none. That motion's unanimous. Okay, we're now going to move on to the Kpmg Phase 3 Fiscal and Operational Performance Review. Mr. Dalton, and I believe the presenter is our Director, Mr. Vanden Heuvel, or I'll defer to you in any way. And I'm sponsoring the motion, so I'll ask Deputy Mayor Miyashiro to lead debate and discussion.
That's a submission, Your Worship, so we have no presentation per se.
Okay.
It's simply the making public of those three reports.
Okay, so The resolution is KPMG Phase 3 Fiscal and Operational Performance Review. Be it resolved that City Council receive for information the Phase 3 Fiscal and Operational Performance Review from KPMG, and that's moved by myself. I'll hand it over to Deputy Mayor Miyashiro at this point.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Did you want to open?
Yep. This report was launched. It's a little bit different in that it is 3 organizations that are not strictly within the City of Lethbridge. So the latest operational review is different from the previous phases. Instead of looking at internal city departments, it explores opportunities for improvement within 3 entities that are funded by Lethbridge taxpayers with limited oversight by Lethbridge City Council. We look forward to constructive discussions with Lethbridge Police Services, Economic Development Lethbridge, and the Lethbridge Public Library on the observations and recommendations in the KPMG Phase 3 report. That's my opening.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Spearman, for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mr. Dalton, for sharing it publicly. Now, traditionally, I think, Mayor Spearman, as you've said, the first 2 phases were fairly internal to the city, and so we, out of those reports, we had some motions going forward, some more work to be done and some changes to be made internally. Is the goal here to share this information with the 3 entities that it deals with, and to ask them to report back to council, perhaps? It's not us to tell them.
Sure. I believe the information has already been shared with the 3 entities. I'll ask our city manager to confirm that.
Yes, the information has been shared with the 3 entities, and we've had initial meetings to discuss how we can support them in pursuing those opportunities. And I think it's important to note, too, that even though these reports were on external entities, a number of the opportunities or recommendations were directed back to the city. So we've begun conversations about how to move these forward, much like the other phases of the report have unfolded.
Okay, thank you. So we will see some I guess, a further meeting or some further recommendations or some further reporting from these organizations of how they're going to implement, or if they're going to implement, or if they're going to validate, etc. That'll come forward to council at some point.
That's correct.
Okay,
and
thank you.
These recommendations are to City Council as well. So we know that we'll be having discussions with the Lethbridge Police Commission, for example, and there's opportunity for discussion with Economic Development Lethbridge, and certainly with the library. So council certainly has a role as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Kaufman. Sorry, I'm back to Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. He's conducting this session. Yeah.
You could just do it yourself if you want, Mayor. Just saying. I see no more hands up.
The next one is Councillor Kaufman in the queue that I see here.
I know.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, whoever's chairing. No, my question was already asked and by Councillor Carlson and received a response. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If there's no more questions, Mayor Spearman, did you want to open debate?
Sure. This phase has been completed now. It provides a lot of information to council and to the organizations. I think the information is useful and will create further discussion going forward, and important to have those discussions with the organizations affected.
Thank you very much. For some reason, I can't bring up the actual motion. So I'm wondering if there's...
I read it at the beginning. It's quite simple. It's just be it resolved that council receive for information the Phase 3 fiscal and operational performance review.
Yeah, thank you. That wasn't the point, but thank you very much.
Okay.
We'd like to call for the vote. Is there any opposed? Oh, wait, I see a hand.
Sorry.
Councillor Carlson.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor. Just a quick question. The copy that I received is stamped all over it, confidential, confidential, confidential. Just want to ensure that nothing in this report is confidential and that'll be removed.
Mr. Dalton?
That's correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any more debate? There being none, call the question. All in favor? Is there any opposed? I see none opposed. That is carried.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next submission from Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. 2020 public auction of properties in tax arrears, March 31st, 2021. Be it resolved that City Council, as per the terms and conditions outlined in Attachment 4, set the reserve bids as outlined in Attachment 3 for each parcel of land offered for sale at the public auction on Wednesday, March the 31st, 2021, at 11 a.m. in Council Chambers with the opportunity to participate virtually. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. Properties that are included in the 2020 public auction of outstanding taxes from 2017, 18, 19, and 20, there are no designated manufactured homes remaining on this tax auction list. The procedure for the 2020 public auction starting January 29th is shown in the attachment that we received earlier. So in accordance with Section 419 of the MGA, the reserve bid must be as close to reasonably possible to the market value of the property, and the appraisals listed in the attachment 3 were completed again by city assessment staff to ensure it is reflective of the current fair market value. I'll take questions at this point.
Are there any questions for Councillor Miyashiro? I see none. Are there any questions for Deputy Mayor Miyashiro? I see none.
Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. I have another resolution from Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. 2021 public auction of properties in tax arrears, April 8th, 2021. Be it resolved that City Council, as per the terms and conditions outlined in Attachment 3, set the reserve bids as outlined in Attachment 2 for each parcel of land and designated manufactured home offered for sale at the public auction on Thursday, April the 8th, 2021 at 11 a.m. in Council Chambers with the opportunity to attend virtually. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. A slight change to this one than the last one is that under Section 418 and 436.09 of the MGA, the public auction must be held during the period of April 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022. The April public auction occurs before the 2021 tax levies are added to the property, minimizing the amount of outstanding taxes at risk and ensuring the city's tax receivables are collected in a timely manner. I'll take questions at this point.
Are there any questions? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Sherman. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Just a question, because it triggered to me because quite often we go through this process, most folks come forward and pay their tax arrears. I guess it was the final line in the submission, I'm trying to recall it, but it said that after the tax auction, if properties remain unsold, the city may become the owner. I'm just curious, and maybe somebody in administration, Mr. Dalton or his team, can answer this. And I'll just make up numbers rather than using real numbers here. Say there's a property worth $1 million and it's got $10,000 in tax arrears. If it doesn't go and sell at auction and the city becomes the owner, what is the process to reconcile? Say we end up selling it eventually and we get $1 million for it. Do we keep the $1 million or do we keep the 10,000 that was owing and refund the 990,000? I'm just unclear about that process. I think I've asked before and it's been answered, but I probably forgot.
I'll ask Mr. Dalton or designate to answer.
Thank you.
I'll ask the city treasurer, or anybody else can reply to that.
I'm not sure if Mr. Lowen wants to jump in, but it really depends on what other liens and different things are on the property at the time it's sold. And so the intent is for us to recover our the obligation that's owed to us. And then depending on the cost incurred in that whole entire process of working through that, typically then the funds are whatever is left over after obligations are incurred is returned in the normal process. But I just looked to Mr. Lowen for additional information because I'm not sure I've ever been through the process where we have to hold it. Just getting some information through an email here as well. So we hold, when it's sold, if it's sold, we would hold the funding, the money that's left over, and the individual has to apply to the court's Queen's Bench to get it back.
Was there anything further from Mr. Lowen on that? That makes sense to me. So it's not just the tax arrears, it's any further costs incurred in the process as well, correct?
Right. Nothing further to add.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Any further questions? I see none. Back to the mover.
Open for debate.
Any debate? I see none.
I call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Move on to 5.4. Police Commission Bylaw Review. I have a resolution from Councillor Crowson. Be resolved that Council direct the City Manager to monitor the Police Act review for implications to the City of Lethbridge. And further be resolved that the City Manager design and recommend a consultation process for a review of the Police Commission Bylaw. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. So in November 2020, just last year, we asked City Manager and City Administration to review the Police Commission bylaw and to bring back suggested changes. We knew then that the Police Act review was on hold, but since then we have learned that it is moving forward. AUMA is having a discussion on it on February 4th, for example, and other work is being done. So this will just temporarily delay our Police Commission bylaw work until we see where the Police Act is going and find out what's going there. And during that time, it will also allow the City Manager to design this consultation process so that we can get the best possible Police Commission bylaw at the end of it. And so I'm asking my colleagues for support the process will be continued, but it will also be part of this wider process that's happening within the province as well.
Okay. Any questions from Council? Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Councillor Crowson, for the motion. Is the intent to wait then through the provincial update process in order to start the conversation for our bylaw, or are you hoping for a concurrent conversation?
Well, I think it was carefully written, the motion, so that we're going to monitor. If we think that there is not going to move as quickly as we'd like, then we get back to our process. And if it's going to move quickly, then we align with their process. So the idea is to see where it's heading, figure out where it is right now, and then make that determination as we move ahead. Because if they get...
I'm sorry, Councillor Crowson, you have frozen. You were just in the point of calling me awesome, I think.
Point of order.
Is Councillor Crowson still on the line?
Oh, there's...
And was any of them...
Yes,
sorry, my internet cut me out. So what I was saying is the entire idea of the motion is to monitor what's happening with the Police Act. If it's going to drag on, then we get back to our own process. If it's done quickly, we align with theirs.
Thank you. Is part of then the City Manager's responsibility in the design and recommendation to assign it to one of the SPCs, or is this an ad hoc committee? What's your thought around that process?
It's not specifically laid out in the motion, but the LPS is under the Public Safety SPC. So like any SPC, that's where it should come up through and then come to council through a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Spearman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Councillor Croson and Mr. Lowen for your work on this. I guess the question is, the motion says to monitor. Is there any indication that there'll be the ability, if council or our police commission so choose, to have input into the Police Act review?
Currently,
Mr. Lowen.
my understanding is that the province has done its engagement already. I was surprised to find out about it after we got this direction. That being said, they may conduct more engagement, and the February 4th President's presentation from AUMA would lay that out. But that's part of what we want to continue monitoring. Some of the discussion has suggested that there may be wide-ranging changes, but of course, as you know, when legislatures consider these things, often all options are on the table at the beginning, and the scope might narrow, and we could get back to this work sooner, which is why we asked for the latitude to monitor it and act appropriately.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. And is there any indication of their timeline?
The last, and you would be aware that we hear these timelines and then they sometimes change, but last I heard was that we would see legislative proposals by the fall.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. I see no more councillors in the queue. So back to the mover.
I'll leave it to debate and I'll close.
Is there any debate? I see none. I'll ask Councillor Croson to close.
As our discussion in November, we're well aware that our Police Commission bylaw does need some update, but we want it done well. And if there's going to be changes to the Police Act, we want to be in accordance with that as well. And it would make no sense to have administration do the work and then have to redo it. So that's why we're bringing this forward, so that we'll monitor it and move ahead appropriately. So I will ask my colleagues for support and call the question.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. There's no official business at this meeting. No OBRs were submitted. We will now move on to bylaws. I have a resolution submitted by Councillor Kaufman, Bylaw 6251, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge to establish alternate methods of public notification and advertisements. For second reading, be it resolved that Bylaw 6251, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge to establish alternate methods of public notification and advertisements, be given second reading. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I do believe that there is an amendment there as well.
Okay, I have an amendment from Councillor Kaufman. I'm just trying to... be it resolved that Bylaw 6251, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge to establish alternate methods of public notification and advertisement, be amended by inserting the words 16 and following part and before 17 in section 4, sub 1, sub A, sub 3. And further be it resolved that the costs of print advertising related to Part 17 applications are to be covered in full from the applicant, and that the city manager bring an amending bylaw to Bylaw 5197, the fees and charges bylaw for council, to consideration no later than February 2021. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. We've had we heard some feedback at our public hearing of 2 weeks ago or whenever it was. I'll deal with the second part of the amendment first about the cost of advertising. One of the things that I'm not certain the council was aware of was that we were not currently recuperating the costs for the Part 17 applications. Part 17 is basically zoning, development, planning, things of that nature. And staff were following our directions. When council had initiated the budget review process, we had been very clear that it was about reductions. It was not about finding different avenues for revenue. And through this process of this bylaw, it came out that that was one of the challenges that planning was certainly experiencing. So the second operative clause is an attempt to strengthen what it is that we're doing to ensure that the applicant is covering the costs, the full costs and true costs of print advertising, and that change gets affected. So that's what I'm asking for there in that aspect of the bylaw. The first operative clause, Part 16, is actually the part that this bylaw falls under. And again, in the presentations, it did sort of resonate with me, and I think it might have resonated with most of my colleagues as well, that if we include Part 16 here, any future council can, of course, change bylaws as they see fit, but the necessity to advertise that in print media would actually be a requirement. So this just codifies in our own bylaw that if we wish to change these parameters again in the future, that there needs to be advertisement in print media. That's basically what that is attempting to encompass. So it's about adding the words 16 and before 17. So it would read Part 16 and Part 17 in the bylaw. I would take questions, and if there are no questions, open it to debate.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. Basically, the format of the ads was going to change and substantially reduce the size of the ad. While the applicant might be paying for the ad, the issue of less revenue to the Herald, which isn't City Council's issue, I admit, would not change. Is that correct?
This is an attempt to correct an internal issue as opposed to dealing with it publicly.
Okay.
But it may address that same concern that if there is a requirement for additional notice, something to be expanded, a map to be included or something of that nature, the cost is covered, and of course that would change the size that's in the Herald as well. So again, it's about the applicant covering those costs.
Okay. Councillor Campbell?
I guess I was kind of asking the same question because the concerns that we had in our last public hearing, that it would be a devastating impact for changing what we're doing with the Herald. So this addresses that, I would say. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think that takes care of an element of it. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I think it might be important, Your Worship, just to share with Council the portion of our advertising spend that falls under the category Councillor Kaufman is speaking about and that amendment is speaking about, just so Council understands what proportion of the X amount of dollars we spend annually would be recovered from an applicant.
Bear with us here for a second.
While that's happening, there's a member of the public that wishes to speak. I just need to get clarification. My understanding is the time for public input is over. I just want to clarify that. Madam City Clerk?
Mayor Spearman, the public hearing has closed. It was declared closed at the last council meeting. Maybe City Solicitor Lowen would like to comment on public participating at this point in time.
Mr. Lowen?
Yeah, I'm just formulating my thoughts, Your Worship. As the clerk has indicated, the public hearing is closed. subject to what the procedure bylaw reads, you're limited by that in terms of what you can allow in the meeting today. And I defer to the clerk on any procedural steps there. Short of something in the procedural bylaw allowing you to hear this now, my advice would be if you're ever hearing from a member or an interested party on a bylaw for which a public hearing is required, the fact that a public hearing is required by the Municipal Government Act introduces concepts of administrative justice or fairness. And one of those things is that everybody has the opportunity to respond to what else is said. And if you want to hear from somebody for or against this bylaw, my advice would be to re-advertise and conduct another public hearing and invite such input at that time.
Which we have already done once, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my only question to the member of the public is, do you wish to speak for or against this proposed bylaw? Yes or no?
That's not a simple question because you've introduced an amendment here.
Okay, I just need to know, the council has to make a decision, so it has to be a yes or no answer.
Well, I can't give you a yes or no answer.
Okay.
It may be moot.
Okay, my ruling is that we cannot allow this gentleman to speak at this time. Council satisfied with that ruling?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is anyone opposed to that ruling?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Sure.
Thank you. Now, the bylaw is changing, and so people could have the argument, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lowen, that they should now have a say on the changes that are being presented and that their voices haven't been heard on what the alternative is being brought forward. Would that be an argument that listen to other viewpoints when there's amendments happening and that it's changed from the original proposal?
That is the outline of the argument and the issue. Cases that I've considered that fall into sort of two categories, where the changes are too small, or in the judgment, always again with the benefit of hindsight being a court case, where the changes are not likely to have made any difference in terms of public consultation, then the courts will not direct that a new hearing is being made. But at the other end of the spectrum, obviously, if the changes were so great that the public, that it has changed it significantly enough, then council would have to hold a new public hearing. And there's no easy way to know whether a court would say it's significant or not.
Okay, so yeah, then that would be something that if someone felt that they didn't have their voice heard, that they would have to take it to another step. Am I correct?
If an individual who was affected by this was concerned about the process and not meeting the requirements of procedural fairness, they would take that challenge up in court. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you.
Councillor Morrow?
Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm trying to maybe understand a little bit process first. So we had the public hearing. If I remember correctly, Councillor Kaufman asked that we postponed it for a week because he needed time to do whatever it is he needed to do. Since that time, Councillor Kaufman has come forward with one or maybe two amendments. So therefore, the public or anybody that took part in the public hearing would have no knowledge of these amendments until they became public. And I don't know, when did your amendments become public, Councillor Kaufman or City Clerk?
Approximately 3 minutes ago, Councillor Morrow.
So, because I was going to ask, not even council has seen the amendments until 3 minutes ago. So therefore, I would take the advice of the city solicitor that we postpone again, listen to the amendments, but postpone any decision, and if need be, re-advertise and have another public hearing, because in my opinion, the amendments change everything that was done in the past. I would like to hear what the speaker in front of you has to say.
Okay, thank you. I have the Legislative Services Manager in the queue.
Just a response to City Manager's question. There's a question regarding the percentage that those fees were charged to planning and development advertisements. 2017, 47% of the overall advertisement cost. 2018, 50%. 2019, 68%. In 2020, outlier year being COVID, at 74%.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spoon. I'm not sure where we are in the process. I had a question on the second operative clause in the further be it resolved, but if we want to talk about process first, I can wait, or I can ask that question now. I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, so right now, Councillor Carlson, or Councillor Kaufman has proposed an amendment to his own resolution, which is in writing.
Mm-hmm.
So the amendment can be discussed. Acting Mayor Higgin is behind you in the queue. He might have a question about process. I have a question about process, but go ahead and ask your question about the second operative clause, if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, point of order. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor. Point of order. I thought, Mr. Mayor, that you had asked council if we were to allow whoever is in council chambers to speak or not, and I thought that's what we were talking about, rather than getting into the.
No, I thought we
I had thought we had dealt with that.
Yeah.
I had made a decision saying,
I
said,
I only heard three people. I only heard three people say yes, and I said I'd like to hear what the speaker would like to say.
And I asked, and the speaker could not tell us whether he wanted to speak in favor or against the bylaw. So rather than risk the process, I said no.
Okay, so do we not
decide on that?
Do we not?
Yeah, like if you want to vote on it, that's what I said. Does anyone challenge? And I didn't hear anybody challenge. So
I challenge the chair. I didn't hear you ask that, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, or I would have said I would challenge the chair's decision.
Okay.
However, understanding that, I realize that we're opening up a can of worms, which is why I suggested we re-advertise. But I do challenge the chair.
Okay, so I'll accept that. And I'll ask the city clerk, now the chair's been challenged, the process is to have a vote on the chair's decision, which is to not allow the gentleman to speak.
Your worship, first, and I'm going to ask the city solicitor, I believe that in order to allow one member of the public to speak, you'd have to advertise to allow anybody that wants to speak. So this may be moot, the challenge to the chair. City solicitor?
Can you just repeat the question to make sure I understand it?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sorry, at this point in time, public hearing has closed. To now allow another member of the public to speak, you'd have to offer the same opportunity to all members of the public, and I think re-advertise.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, if I may, since I'm the one that challenged the chair, I totally agree with that, and I am not challenging the chair. Your question was, do we allow the speaker to speak? And I'm going to agree that all 9 of us would say no, because that is totally out of process. So if you ask the question, if we're going to challenge the chair on that decision, you're going to get unanimous support with your decision. However, what I'm suggesting is that is not actually fair or complete. We have someone from the public that wishes to speak. I'm assuming it's based on the amendments or whatever else. Therefore, I'm suggesting that by challenging the chair, if we rule you out of order or out of your decision, then I would suggest that we re-advertise and continue with the public hearing.
If I could just add one more thing, I believe that the amendments would have to be passed in order for them to be re-advertised. City Solicitor?
There are two separate questions. One would be if you wanted to allow more members of the public to comment on what has been passed or given first reading already. That's one advertisement. The second question that relates back to the question that Councillor Parker asked was, if a bylaw was amended after a public hearing, does it need to be re-advertised? Sometimes the safest course of action is always to re-advertise, but where the change is minor, courts have not made that a requirement. So I guess the question is, are we talking about a member of the public who wants to talk about what was given first reading? Or are we talking about something that relates to the amendment? Because that would impact what we debate today.
And I guess, Mr. Mayor, if I may, that's the point I'm trying to make. How do we know without knowing what the presenter wants to talk to us about? So we're kind of caught. I understand it. I'm not trying to put council in a difficult position because I agree with council. However, we're now faced with this.
The city clerk advises that there's two issues here. One, we can vote on whether we want to allow the amendment. And two, we can vote on whether we want to re-advertise a public hearing. So just trying to provide an orderly process going forward. So if we amend the resolution, if the amendment passes, then there may be a desire to rehold the public hearing. But with that, I have 5 people in the queue. So I'm just trying to focus the discussion so we can get to a decision point. Do you wish to deal with the amendment to the resolution? So I would go back to the mover. Councillor Kaufman, you've provided the amendment. Do you wish to have that dealt with at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. You know, you hear things in a public hearing that motivate you or inspire you towards better governance or fiscal stewardship. And that's what the intent was here, was to strengthen what it is that we're doing. You could look at the second operative clause as being outside the bylaw. Perhaps it's something then that could be brought back to a future meeting. If it's going to complicate matters, if we are going to upset the public by trying to do something like this, then I would call the question and encourage my colleagues to defeat the amendment that's put forward in order for us to deal with second reading and move on in order.
I have a question. Wait, point of order for a second. I have a question that directly relates to the amendment, though. So in order to cut off our questions about the amendment is not holding up with fair process either.
So, Councillor Kaufman, if the original amendment, if the original motion passes, would you introduce the amendment at a later date? At a future meeting, so that there could be debate?
Can you, what is it that you're meaning?
So if you were to withdraw this, but
I don't know if I can because
no, if it was defeated, okay, then could it be considered at a future meeting and achieve the same purpose that you're trying to achieve?
Certainly, I would not make any attempt whatsoever to amend the bylaw. So that addition of section 16 would never come back, at least not for me. The second part of the operative clause could come forward as a motion from me at the next council meeting, and I do believe that is outside that bylaw, as it's an instruction to the city manager.
Okay, Councillor Miyashiro, how do you feel about that?
Well, no, Mayor Spearman, thank you for that. To stop the process in the middle after Councillor Kaufman's already introduced it, I don't think is paying is giving him short shrift as well. The question I have is that most of the feedback that we received prior to the public hearing was that people wanted to see some sort of advertising in the print media maintained in some way. And Councillor Kaufman, do you believe that your amendment reflected the vast majority of the feedback we received about this amendment?
You mean the amendment in front of you, or the amendment that I introduced and council supported last time?
Yeah, no, the amendment that you've introduced today, do you think it reflects the majority of the feedback we received in total about this bylaw?
The first operative clause, I could make an alignment to that question because we did hear from the public that, especially from Mr. Hancock at the Herald, that this did catch them a little bit off guard, and the requirement to what this would mean is that the requirement for this council or any future council to change this bylaw would actually, it would have to be advertised in print media.
Right. So you're believing that your clause that you're presenting today as your amendment does reflect what we heard during the public hearing process?
I believe it makes the work of council even more transparent. Yes.
Right. So that means that if we pass this, we're still reflecting the will of the public because your amendment is reflecting what we've heard already. The vast majority of what we heard is reflected in your amendment. Is that correct?
I would not bring forward an amendment if it wasn't something that I had heard. Absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. And yeah, I'm caught between a rock and a hard place here too, because I thought that was actually the way we've always done public hearings. We listen, and if there's something that triggers something in a member of council, they bring forward amendment before second reading. And so this is just the process we traditionally use. So I'm curious why we're trying to change it. But be that as it may, I'm wondering if there a motion to divide would be helpful, because I do think I like this at the risk of it being completely defeated to cover people's backsides or give them cover in public. The second actionable clause is actually one that I think makes a lot of sense, that the cost of the advertising, the cost of the application should be borne by the applicants and not by the taxpayers. So I'm wondering if a motion to divide would be amenable to the mover.
So any member of council can make a motion to divide.
I will make that motion to divide, because I do believe the second part has no bearing on the bylaw in front of us. That's a second directive to city manager and the administration to make those costs fully recoverable.
Okay, a motion to divide has been introduced. Does it require a seconder? Yes, it does. Is there anyone willing to second the motion to divide?
I'll second that.
Okay, Councillor Campbell. I do have two other councillors in the queue, but we will move to the motion to divide immediately. So we've heard the rationale from Councillor Carlson. Is there anything else, Councillor Carlson?
No, I will call for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor of dividing? Is anyone opposed? There are none.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, it's Joe.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, but did we finish with the challenging the chair thing? Like I'm getting confused.
I am getting confused too.
Yeah, so can we get some advice here, like some legal advice maybe? Because
we haven't got to the point of debating these motions yet, but
Doesn't challenging the chair require some sort of a vote by council before we can move forward with anything else?
Getting some feedback. Councilor Morrow, yes, the challenge of the chair does require a vote, but I think we were trying to determine whether there was a vote to be had based on process, and whether that there was going to be an amendment put forth, and whether there was going to be advertising or not. So if you would still like to put your challenge to the chair forward, definitely that is within procedure. Can I ask what your question is again, please?
My question is around process. If the chair is challenged, shouldn't there be a decision made on that before we move to anything else?
Correct, but what was the challenge to the chair? What was that question?
Well, I thought it was whether I thought the mayor asked council if we allowed the gentleman in the audience, if we were to allow him to speak or not.
Okay, so
I thought that was what the mayor was asking.
So I would say, in order to deal with it today and not have another public hearing, my ruling is that the gentleman not be allowed to speak today.
It's not that, okay, so have we voted on that? That's all I'm trying to get at. We should vote on that then,
Okay.
and then we can move forward.
So, okay, so at first I didn't hear that there was any challenge, but now that you're formally notifying the challenge, we can vote on it, and I will ask for a roll call vote.
Yeah, I thought I challenged 3 or 4 times already, but let's go on with this one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Point of, doesn't matter.
Can't you just make the call from the chair?
Yeah, I thought it was withdrawn, saying that we'd vote against it because it violate process.
Yeah, you don't need a vote for anything.
I've made the ruling, but my ruling has been challenged. So therefore, we'll say, you either uphold the chair, so if you're in favor of the chair's ruling, or opposed.
Correct. Any member of council has the right to challenge the chair, and Councillor Morrow has challenged the chair. So we are voting to uphold the mayor's decision to not allow the members of public to speak. Councillor.
Point of order here. We can't. This is not something you can even challenge. I don't think you can challenge just because by process under the MGA, we can't allow someone else to speak unless we open up to everyone else. It's just. It's not a matter of. This is a judgment call. This is just law. It's law. So we can't allow someone to speak, even if it doesn't matter what we think about that person or what their viewpoint is, if we agree or not. We just can't do that. That's what I'm just saying.
So my understanding is that if you overrule my ruling, we would have to have another public hearing. We would let the gentleman speak, and then we'd have to have another public hearing.
So on that grounds, okay, so then I have an understanding. Okay, so that would just, by overruling you, that would trigger a public hearing.
That's my understanding.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, can we proceed with the roll call, either in favor of the chair or opposed?
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor.
Councillor Crowson.
In favor.
Councillor Morrow.
Opposed.
Councillor Parker.
In favor.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
In favor.
Mayor Spearman.
In favor.
Campbell.
In favor.
Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Carried 7-2. The mayor's decision is upheld.
Thank you. Okay, so we have divided the motion, which is the amendment. I have 2 speakers in the queue. I have Acting Mayor Hagan and Councillor Kaufman. So do you wish to speak at this time on, the next stage would be to deal with each stage of the amendment. Are you both speaking to the amendment and specifically the first paragraph?
Mayor Spearman, I'm not sure if we actually voted to divide. I can't remember anymore.
Oh, did we vote to divide?
Yes,
Yep.
we did.
Yes, we did.
9-0.
9-0, we did.
Okay, thank you.
So at this stage, we're still dealing with the amendment. The motion to divide passed. We're dealing with paragraph 1. Acting Mayor Higgin?
I am extremely confused here, and we're going through a public hearing, and I just need some clarity. The actual resolution that's on the table now, or the from the public hearing, what these two amendments, we're dividing them, but both of them are in addition to what we've already heard. Is that correct?
That's correct. The original motion was, be it resolved that Bylaws 6251, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge to establish alternate methods of public notification and advertisements, be given second reading. And then Councillor Kaufman introduced the amendment, which is on the screen.
Okay, so my next question is then, and I'm not sure who can answer this, if I want to have another public hearing, how would I vote in this case? Sorry, Councillor Carlson, giggle and laugh, but I do want some clarification on this. I'm not going to vote on something that I don't know and I'm not understanding. It's not right.
Okay, I can defer to the city clerk or perhaps the city solicitor. If someone wants to force a second public hearing, what are their options at this stage?
Procedurally, I'll let the clerk advise on any of those, but I do want to comment. The advice that I'm giving you is advice. You make the decision as to whether or not you want to have a public hearing to hear from more people or not. I am telling you that the safest way to do that, to insulate yourself from a challenge, is to do so in the context of a third, at this point, public hearing. There is a distinction between what I just said and me telling you that it is a legal requirement. And that's all I wanted to make clear. I'm not sure what the current question on the table is, so I can't answer the question directly that you put to me about how to get to another public hearing.
So my understanding, I'll let Acting Mayor Higgin correct me if I'm incorrect, but we had a public hearing, a resolution came forward that everybody understood. An amendment came forward today that the public was not aware of, raising issues that perhaps would be discussed further at a subsequent public hearing. And Acting Mayor Higgin believes that we should have a third public hearing because of these changes. Is that correct?
I'm just, the process here, I don't know where we are, and I'm struggling with supporting or not supporting because it's over the wall. I don't know what these amendments have been changed since we were here, and so I'm sorry, I'm just confused, but that's fine. I'll do what I need to do.
Okay, the city clerk, did you want to weigh in at this stage?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I just want to clarify that the second clause is not an amendment to this bylaw. It's an amendment to the fees and services bylaw.
Okay, so only the first paragraph would affect the proposed bylaw. Okay. Okay, having said that, can we now discuss the first paragraph as the motion has been divided?
Can someone put it on the screen? So I can see it.
Yeah, can see it.
Yeah. Please.
We will get that on the screen. Apologies.
Thank you. No, that's okay. Nothing to apologize for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, if I may?
Go ahead.
I'm in the queue as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, okay, and I have my hand up there, so thank you. So first of all, thank you, Ms. Hilford, for putting that up. So my question to you is, in one of the amendments here, so Councillor Kaufman, you're asking that the advertising fees be shifted to the applicant. Am I correct? The cost?
Yes, Councillor Parker. We heard from Ms. Gehring that basically the organization, I guess taxpayers, are covering the costs for some applications. That's correct.
So I was hearing that, and I don't want to muddy the waters for. Of course, we would probably want to hear from industry or the people that usually have these kind of applications, that being developers and all that, knowing that this is going to be an additional cost. And so wouldn't it warrant, if passed, and I don't expect you, Councillor Kaufman, to answer this, but it would warrant a public hearing if this amendment was passed to hear from the people that would be affected by the change through this bylaw because of the amendment.
Well, if the second operative clause, we've divided, if the second operative clause requires an amendment to an additional bylaw, then that would be dealt with at that time. And the process we establish could be that we open it for feedback from industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Hawkins, did you wish to?
Just for clarity, though, that second amendment is not specific to this bylaw, as been pointed out. The fees and charges bylaw is not a statutory. There isn't a statutory requirement to have a public hearing. However, if that is passed, administration will commit to do some additional analysis in terms of fleshing out the proposed amendment to that bylaw, and recommend an engagement exercise if that's council's wish. So, but just strictly speaking, it in itself, an amendment to that bylaw doesn't require a public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Carlson, did you have something?
Just a question to the mover, if I may, Mayor Spearman.
Okay, so this is directed at Councillor Kaufman. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Kaufman. The first section, the actual amendment to the bylaw, adding in section 16 of the MGA, what exactly does that mean? Because in my humble opinion, you are the one that teaches MGA, so you might be much better to clarify. That doesn't really have a major impact to the public. It's basically putting more onus on council that if we're to change these types of bylaws going forward, that we do have to advertise in print. Is that what that's how I read it. I want to know how you intended it.
It is actually both. The consequence to the amendment is that it's more work for council, which is what we're paid to do. The advantage to the community is that if we want to change this advertising bylaw, it needs to be advertised in print. We need to advertise in print if we're going to be amending this bylaw. As the bylaw currently sits, that requirement is not there.
Right.
So this is an attempt to capture section 606 and 606.1, which relate to this particular bylaw.
Right. So that's the way it's actually strengthening it, giving the public more information. It's basically saying if council decides to do more changes in the future, the public will be notified, not just in other ways, but in print. So this is actually strengthening the public's notification, correct?
It was a couple of the presenters who had touched upon the fact that this was happening and people weren't necessarily aware of it. So in my mind, it was about, as you say, strengthening it, adding part 16, and we've got things covered in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Rob, you're on mute.
Sorry, I have a question for Councillor Kaufman. Since there are 9 of us on council and you're the one that wrote the amendment, and you've only explained it 6 times now. Do you think you could explain it 2 more times so that everybody gets their shot at having this explained?
Point of order, Councillor Miyashiro. That's totally out of order. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Like, come on. If we want, I called a point of order and I'm going to speak. If we need some clarification, there's nothing wrong with asking the questions. And I'm sorry if you understand everything from the first go round. That's wrong to say that. So
all I said was he's explained it 6 times, so maybe he can explain it 2 more times.
I think I will rule Councillor Miyashiro out of order. We'll continue with constructive discussion. We're debating paragraph 1 because the motion was divided. Okay, for clarity, does anyone else have questions of Councillor Kaufman before we move to debate on paragraph 1? Councillor Morrow.
I'm just so happy that we have the most intelligent politician in our midst, and that's Councillor Miyashiro, and the rest of us are just a bunch of dummies. Thank you,
Point of order. Point of order.
Yeah, I'm going to rule that out of order. Let's have constructive discussion. Okay, is there any further questions of Councillor Kaufman? I see none. We'll move on to debate. Councillor Kaufman, would you like to open on the first paragraph?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. First, if something takes 100 times to explain it, I will happily explain it. That's the educator in me. Secondly, as I said a little bit earlier, that when things come forward in a public hearing, there is the expectation that we will listen to what the public is saying and try to strengthen things. For those of you watching this show from home and are perplexed about the lack of understanding of what's going on in terms of process, this doesn't happen that often where somebody actually shows up after a public hearing and wishes to speak. And I have full respect for the individual. I have no idea who it is or what they wish to say. However, there is a codified process that we follow, and it's unfortunate that this has occurred. I do certainly heed the warnings of the city manager, and what happens is that if, in my mind, this does not change the form or substance other than strengthen the bylaw to put more power into words like transparency and accountability for the public. However, I am now concerned about any changes to the bylaw, and I would encourage my colleagues to defeat the first operative clause. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson, debate on.
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. I fully support my colleague in what he was trying to do here. I think that it is actually strengthening the bylaw and giving the public better information. But because of the comments of some of my colleagues, I will be voting against, and hopefully we can look at making it better in the future. But at the risk of the bylaw failing or being challenged because of, I don't know what to call it, I will be voting against. But I do appreciate the intent here. I applaud the intent.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the fact that Councillor Kaufman made the effort to try to have this bylaw amended to reflect what we'd heard, but I will respect his wishes, though, and his desire to defeat this this clause, so I will vote against it.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? I see no one. I'll ask Councillor Kaufman to close.
Just my apologies to council for taking the time here, and it was certainly not my intent to broadside anybody with this. And, if we can look at alternate processes, I'm certain that the governance SPC can deal with this in the future.
Thank you. All in favor of the amendment, and we'll do it by roll call, I guess.
Councillor Crowson.
Opposed.
Councillor Morrow. Councillor Morrow, you're on mute. Councillor Parker,
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Higgin,
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Opposed.
Mayor Spearman,
Opposed?
Councillor Campbell,
Opposed?
Councillor Carlson,
Opposed?
Councillor Kaufman,
In favor?
Councillor Morrow. That is lost, 7-1.
Okay,
Sorry,
we'll now move
doesn't
on.
everybody have to vote?
We can't reach Councillor Morrow at this point. Something to do with the technology, but it's 7-1. We can add his vote afterwards if he can communicate with us. Councillor Morrow, can you hear us? Okay. In the interest of time, we'll move on to the second amendment. I'll ask Councillor Kaufman to introduce the second part.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I think I had addressed this in my opening of both parts. Again, just very quickly, this is recognizing, as Ms. Gehring expressed, that we are not currently covering all of the costs. This proposes that we look at amending the fees and charges bylaw. However, in respect with the comments that Councillor Parker made and in reflection of the statements made by Mr. Hawkins, there will have to be perhaps a slightly larger conversation and is legislatively required on this, just so that those who tend to be paying these costs a lot understand the implications of the change. I would at least like the process started, investigated. So I would just encourage my colleagues to support the second clause. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I will be supporting the second operative clause. It's what I always actually thought was our practice. And so I appreciate us hearing at the public hearing that it was not our practice, and Councillor Kaufman bringing forward this, which will, I think, will bring it back into line to what I thought was happening. So I appreciate it and I will support.
Okay, the Director of Infrastructure, did you have a comment at this time?
Just in light of the council's desire to make sure that we do a little outreach to those, the stakeholders that are most directly impacted by that, I would ask council's indulgence, the mover potentially, to change that report back date. I think we're going to need a little bit more time in order to do that effectively, and I would propose that be a return back to council on April the 6th would be a more appropriate date. That would allow us time to do some outreach, do our analysis, make sure we've got the fees correct based on the direction that we're being given today.
If you need an amendment motion, I can make that.
Well, we need an amendment. We need to amend the amendment. Okay, Councillor Carlson is going to amend it to April the 6th. Can we deal with that amendment?
I'd need a seconder.
Is there a seconder, Councillor Miyashiro? Okay. Okay, the date has been changed from February 2021 to April the 6th, 2021. Moved by Councillor Carlson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. All in favor? Is anyone opposed? Okay, is Councillor Morrow back online yet? Councillor Morrow, are you there? I'm not sure what to do when we can't reach a councillor. Okay.
Does anyone have the ability to text or email Joe? See if he's...
Just did.
Thank you.
That appeared to be unanimous, so we can amend the second paragraph. We're now dealing with the amendment as amended. It appears on the screen with a return date of April the 6th, 2021. Okay, I think we had moved into debate on the amendment. Councillor Kaufman had opened, Councillor Carlson had spoken in favor. Would any other councillors like to speak to this amendment? I see none. Okay, I'll ask Councillor Kaufman to close.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed?
Hagan.
Okay, can we do a roll call vote then, since there's a dissent?
Councillor Parker.
In favor?
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Rob, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, favor?
Mayor Spearman.
In favor.
Councillor Campbell.
Favor.
Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor?
Councillor Crowson.
In favor.
Councillor Morrow. It's carried 7-1.
Okay. I think we're going to call a break at this point until hopefully we'll be able to reconnect with Councillor Morrow.
So, Mr. Mayor, are we just going to be voting on it when we do return as amended, as presented?
Right. So.
Thank you.
Actually no amendment, so for the bylaw.
The bylaw itself has no amendment because
Okay.
we defeated that, and the other is a separate recommendation.
Okay.
So we will deal with second reading when we return, but I'm hesitant to go further while we still can't reach Councillor Morrow. Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And it's right now it's 3:08. We'll resume at 3:15 ideally. Okay, we are going to try and resume the meeting. Councillor Morrow, are you there?
Linda Sprinkle.
Okay, let's take a roll call, please.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Present. And sorry, Bonnie, I understand that Councillor Morrow has emailed you. I'm not sure, but you might want to check that.
I will check that after roll call. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
He's with Joe.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, you're on mute if you're for roll call. Mayor Spearman.
Present.
Councillor Campbell.
Here.
Councillor Carlson.
Here.
Councillor Kaufman.
Present.
Councillor Croson.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Morrow. Councillor Parker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Looks like we have two absent.
Getting worse.
Rob says he's here. So
No, sorry, I'm here.
Oh, there you
I'm here. I was in a different program. I couldn't get out of full screen.
Okay. And we still don't have Councillor Morrow. What can we do at this stage when we can't communicate with the councillor? Do we suspend the meeting?
What?
We have quorum.
Okay, we have quorum, so we can go forward. Okay. Okay, we'll go back to Bylaw 6251, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge to establish alternate methods of public notification and advertisements. For second reading, be it resolved that Bylaw 6251, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge to establish alternate methods of public notification and advertisements, be given second reading. Do I now read this amendment even though it doesn't really amend the bylaw itself? Okay, we don't read the amendment that we passed previously. Bylaw stands on its own. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Yes, there should be no amendment to Bylaw 6251 since the public hearing. Moving forward, I want to thank my colleagues for entertaining the amendments. I'd like to thank Chloe and Ryan for their stewardship out of the clerk's office and through the organization on this particular bylaw as well, and for the work that you've done. When this bylaw came forward, I think that there was maybe some confusion on the part of council, and hopefully I can clarify that here. First of all, the bylaw actually brings us into the 21st century, so to speak. Back in I believe it was 2017, the provincial government actually amended the Municipal Government Act and permitted alternative forms of advertising. I think some of you that were around last term will remember my excitement about that and a desire to engage with people differently. It wasn't about leaving one particular method or source. It was about expanding how we can engage with our community. And that's what this bylaw does. It provides that opportunity for greater opportunity for the public to participate. It was in the conversation around the savings that I think the concern of council was raised. Before the second public hearing, members of council recall that we amended the bylaw though, and we made two substantive changes to it. First of all, in section 4, we took out the word only, which now means that there is a greater requirement to be advertising in paper form, in local newspaper, for the part 17 for the planning applications that come forward. This is what we heard from the public. This was probably the biggest point of contention from the public. They were concerned that they would no longer be seeing a lot of the development permits, applications, zonings, things of that nature, because this is how an element of our population receives their information. Not everybody is wired to technology. Not everybody can be, not everybody does want to be. And so we do need to make certain that we are now not only just putting things in one particular format or another, but we're trying to be as encompassing through different medium, as many medium as possible. I appreciated the words certainly of Mr. Hancock when he came and presented the second public hearing. council had expressed its concern, I think at that time as well, that there had not been a conversation with the Herald, and I know that the city manager has heard that and has taken that forward. Also appreciated the words of Mr. Warwick. On a personal note, I was happy to see Mr. Warwick when he moved to Lethbridge back in the early 1990s. I was one of the first people he met, and he stayed, which was greatly appreciated. But he and I had a lot of conversations about local government. His words on the archival aspect of print media certainly were something that I had not considered at all, and would certainly motivate me towards ensuring that we continue with processes that we have. Of course, Ms. McLean did a presentation. She is certainly very active for the folks in Westminster Neighbourhood Association, so she is a constant viewer of the print media, looking for zoning development applications and things of that nature. We had asked her about the new ads, if the new ads would meet, in her opinion, meet the needs, and it seems to as well, which is great. So the idea of cost savings are probably not going to be as fulsome as was stated at the first public hearing. This really is, in my mind, this is more about moving us towards other avenues of connecting with the community, providing the community input, providing the community with information, especially with information. And I know that planning and the clerk's office are working through some other processes as well, which are going to create even more opportunity for people to participate in the various planning, development, zoning processes. And in a way that people actually will be comfortable with the process, will understand what's being required, will understand what's happening, and is going to, I think, just strengthen the knowledge, the information in the community. Not for one way or another on applications, if we're talking zoning, but provide a greater information and greater access to information for everybody. So I would encourage my colleagues to support second and third reading.
Thank you. I'll take that as your opening. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'm going to leave my camera off because I think that's what's taking my internet down. I will be supporting this. We did listen to the concerns of the community. Certainly people were worried that, print media would disappear, and that's not the case here. This is adding to it. And from the many conversations I have had with people over things that are coming up for public hearing in the near future, it is obvious that people are looking for this type of information. They know that things are happening, but they can't find it. So as broad as we can be in getting information out there, if we can look at more alternate methods and help the public find the information, this is what we need to do. And this is about expanding the various avenues open to people so that if you like the Lethbridge Herald, it'll be there. If you're more accustomed to using the internet, it will be there. And finding ways to communicate with the community. We cannot always expect the community to use the ways that we're accustomed to because generations are changing, the new ways people are doing things are changing. And I think this finds the balance between those who want the print media and those who are looking for something else. I, like my colleague, I thank the staff for all the work they did on this, because one of the things we keep asking administration to do is find new ways to engage the public, get more people involved, get the information out there. And this is achieving that. And so I will be supporting this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member of council wish to speak? My queue is empty. No one else? Okay, Acting Mayor Higgin.
I was just going to add in that I believe we currently are already, well, I don't believe, I know we're currently doing other forms of advertising, and I'm as far as having a bylaw for this, I think it goes back to removing what is currently been done in its form with our Lethbridge Herald in particular, and so I'm not sure again why we are needing a bylaw for this, and that we are already doing other forms of advertising, and so for that reason I will not be supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on this matter? Is anyone else in the queue? Okay, I will ask Councillor Kaufman to close.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. unless I stand corrected by brighter minds, I do believe that it's a requirement of the Municipal Government Act that if we are establishing processes for advertising things that are both codified and not codified as under the MGA, that we do have the requirement to create the bylaw. So what we're doing is we're bringing our current actions, our current practices into line, certainly with the MGA. When Councillor Crowson talked about changing generations, I immediately had the vision of Ms. Gehring doing a TikTok announcement of a zoning. So I'm really looking forward to that. You know, times change, information changes, the technology that we use change, and this is about encompassing that. This is not stepping away from what it is that we currently do. This is about hopefully streamlining, making it clearer, getting away from those very long, complicated, wordy municipal address or legal address ads, and moving to something that's more simple, something that'll be easier for people to see, to recognize, and to understand. Having said that, this is hopefully an organic process as well, that it's going to change and should always change for the better, should always improve in an effort of serving our community. And ultimately, that's what this comes down to, is serving our community in the best manner that we can. And I believe this current time and date, this bylaw meets the requirements, puts us beyond the requirements, and helps us provide the fact and the information to the community in a manner that's usable for everybody. With that, I'll call question on second reading.
Question's been called. I'll ask for a roll call.
Mayor Spearman.
In favor.
Councillor Campbell.
In favor.
Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor.
Councillor Crowson.
In favor.
Councillor Parker.
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
In favor.
Carried 6-2.
Okay. We have had a communication from Councillor Morrill. As of 3 o'clock, he had to step out and may not be back. So Councillor Morrill has chosen to leave the meeting as of 3 o'clock. So that's why he hasn't been participating. I think it's important to make that known. Okay. We'll move forward with the third reading from Councillor Kaufman. Be it resolved that Bylaw 6251, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge to establish alternate methods of public notification and advertisements, be given third reading, and the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign and seal the same. Councillor Kaufman?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Are any opposed?
Hagan.
Okay, Parker. Okay, we'll do you need to do a roll call? Okay, we will do a roll call for third reading as well.
Councillor Campbell.
Favor.
Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor.
Councillor Crowson.
In favor.
Councillor Parker.
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
In favor.
Mayor Spearman.
In favor. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to Bylaw 6260. I have a resolution from Councillor Campbell. Bylaw 6260, a bylaw amending the Sewerage Service Charge Bylaw 3250. Be it resolved that Bylaw 6260, a bylaw amending the Sewerage Service Charge Bylaw 3250, be given second reading. Councillor Campbell?
I will open it up for any questions that people may have.
Are there any questions? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Just about the changing the calculation and the value for the winter consumption. Can somebody talk me through the rationale on that, please?
If Mayor Spearman, if I could just ask Doug Cope to answer that question for you.
Mr. Kaup is coming to the microphone.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Kaup.
Hello. Your worship, to Councillor Carlson. There's two changes to the winter calculation that are proposed in the bylaws compared to what the previous practice. The first is that when there's a new account established, a utility account, without a winter history to do the calculation, the current bylaw specifies that the customers charge 20 cubic meters in the absence of a consumption history. The proposed change is to replace that 20 cubic meters with 13 cubic meters. And the rationale is that is the average residential winter consumption. So the 20 cubic meters has been used for 25 years plus, and so we're just making it more fair for people that move to town that don't have, haven't had a home or have a history in the utility system. So that's the first change. The second one is that is the minimum charge for or the minimum consumption used within the calculation. And historically, again, for 25 years or more, the bylaws specified that wherever the winter consumption is less than 5 cubic meters, that the calculation uses 5 cubic meters. I think part of the original context for this was to provide the utility with a value where customers are away. So it's to impart a snowbird clause if to prevent customers that spend their winter in Arizona from having no sewer charges all year round because there was no consumption in the winter. And so in consultation with utility services at the call center, it was felt that there are a good number of customers that have elderly, single resident, smaller homes and condos that realistically use less than 5 cubic meters a month. And so it was felt that we should change the 5 to a 3 cubic meters and still maintain that zeros are not used in the calculation.
Okay, thank you. So this is, but it's based on, is it new data? Because we've had these for some time. So the data has changed. I'm just wondering, is that because perhaps of people's implementation of low flow toilets, showers, etc.? Are we seeing a change in society? That's kind of how I read it, that perhaps.
Yes, there's no question that the indoor use on average is on the decline. Each new home is more efficient than the last, and so a new home that was built in the last 3 or 4 years compared to 10 or 15 years earlier would have a much different pattern.
Excellent. Glad to see habits are changing and that we're responding to them appropriately. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? I see none. Councillor Campbell, would you like to close?
Sure. So we've got a number of amendments that were created in this new bylaw upon consultation and review, some important ones. With change for winter average calculation, a change without historical water consumption information. And I think one of the big changes here, which was a compromise that we asked for, implementing a charge on all blockages on the private portion, but continuing the in-home service demand 24/7. The new section will state that there will be no charge to the customer for blockages caused by a defect in the public portion of the system. So that's important. There's the describes the application of the defective service callback surcharge. New miscellaneous sewage fees section of Schedule C adds the sewer service inspection and clearing fees to be applied. And as per the City Council decision on December 14th, there'll be no other changes made to the residential, commercial, or industrial sewer rates in Schedules A, B, or C. So some good changes there. I think that we should implement these.
Thank you. Take that as your close.
Yes.
No debate. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? There are none. For third reading, moved by Councillor Campbell, be it resolved that bylaw 6260, a bylaw amending the sewerage service charge bylaw 3250, be given third reading, and the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign and seal the same. Councillor Campbell.
Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Okay, there was no official business. Okay, no, we're on to inquiries and responses. I submitted one written inquiry prior to the meeting regarding the status of the Brewery Gardens parking lot. Mr. Hawkins, would you be able to tell us what the status of the Brewery Gardens parking lot is?
Council, if you've come up First Avenue off the highway, you'll notice in front of the Brewery Garden there's some construction activity. We have been monitoring a slope failure immediately adjacent to that parking lot and the boardwalk that overlooks the gardens, and it got to a point where we had to actually barricade that area off from actual parking and pedestrian activity. We are making a slope repair in order to stabilize the ground, the slopes there, and then we're going to reinstate the parking lot and the sidewalk associated with that lookout over the Brewery Garden. So that's the activity you're seeing there today. We're about halfway through. The weather's been really cooperative this winter so far. And the intention is to, once the frost is out of the ground, to do all the paving and concrete work this spring.
Okay, so it's not being removed, it's being restored. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, council updates. Are there any council updates? Councillor Carlson, you have an update?
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. Just knowing that council has made some change to boards, commissions, and committees, etc. One thing I'd like to remind folks is at least one of our committees or our organizations in Lethbridge, Tourism Lethbridge, is searching for new board members. Passion for tourism would be helpful but not necessary. We're basically looking for qualified board members. If anyone has an interest, please reach out. You can do so to me or our chair of the board, Suzanne Lind. Just appreciate being able to make that known. Our AGM is coming up, I believe, in March.
Thank you. Any other updates? I see none. So now, other resolutions? Okay, the first one is from Councillor Parker, closed meeting omnibus motion 10.1, 10.2, and 10.5. Be it resolved that Council direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to land use issue, land matter update, legal update, remain confidential pursuant to Section 16, harmful to business interests of a third party, 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, 23, local public body confidences, 24, advice from officials, and 27, privilege legal of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Parker?
Nothing else to add, Your Worship. I call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? There's none. Thank you. Move on to 10.3 from Councillor Campbell, request for option to purchase. Be it resolved that Council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and presentations with respect to the request for option to purchase remain confidential pursuant to Section 16, harmful to business interests of a third party, 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and further be it resolved that a 90-day extension of option to purchase 3401 39th Street to 2299 172 Alberta Limited be approved, and further be it resolved that the purchaser pay a non-refundable payment of $22,491 and will not be attributable to the cash to close, and further be it resolved that the terms of the option to purchase amend the closing date to April 29th, 2021, and further be it resolved that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the agreement. Councillor Campbell?
Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? None? Okay. $10.4 from Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, COVID-19 meeting protocols. Be it resolved that Council direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to COVID-19 meeting protocols remain confidential pursuant to Sections 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that in light of COVID-19 and an ongoing review of our practices, that all meetings of Council, public hearings, standing policy committees, and boards, committees, and committees of Council move from in-person public participation to electronic participation using a variety of means, similar to many other municipalities, until such time that the current public health officer of the Chief Medical Officer of Health regarding mandatory work from home is no longer in effect. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Any questions from Council?
Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'm sorry, it's just such tiny print, even with my big magnifying glasses on. And I don't believe this was in our package. If it was, I missed it. If perhaps we could just clarify the intent of this.
This is, we had a discussion in camera.
And who it applies to.
If I can help perhaps clarify that. I think what we were seeking from Council was a decision as to whether or not we, as indicated, we move from having public attend Council and committee meetings, or do we move to online? And at the same time, we would, our intent is to move to minimal from a staffing perspective, only those who are critical to make sure that the meetings run, like folks from the clerk's office. And that's as indicated in light of sort of where we are. And we reflected on this practice as indicated following an early incident that was shared. So we're looking for guidance from Council as to whether or not we want to move to online until, as indicated, the direction regarding mandatory work changes.
And thank you. That was a bit of the answer to my question. So, because unfortunately I can't read the resolution, I don't have a copy of it. Oh, there it is. Because my only question was, is it completely online, or where necessary, there still will be a staff member or a board member, however it may be, in the building? And I just couldn't see how it was worded.
Yeah, the intent would be to do it online, except for those that would need to be on site to ensure that the meeting went forward. So folks that would need to run the technological side of the business, but fast forward 2 weeks, the intent would be for council here would be for, again, only, you know, poor Mr. Westerson, maybe bonding and team, but the rest of us would be online.
Okay, thank you. And so the intent of this is to make that mandatory. So say 5 members of council wanted to show up, we would be told no, correct?
That would be the intent, but of course there could be a range of options here, but that's the intent as written now.
Perfect, thank you.
Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. A question for the city manager. Is this to allow for more, I guess it's not the way that I'm seeing it now, participation from the communities to leave more available space for them to participate, but that's not the case, correct? This is for everyone, including them, the way that I read it?
This is for everyone, and participation would be electronic.
Electronic. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So maybe let's just add on to the questions here. So if there's no hybrid, if we pass this, citizens won't, for example, at our public hearing in regards to the mustard seed, citizens won't have the opportunity to come to council chambers to speak. Am I correct?
No. That's correct.
Mr. Mayor, are you planning to be in council chambers, or are you going to be planning to stay on electronically?
Well, I was planning to be in council chambers. Somebody has to chair the meeting. Complicating things is that the technology I have doesn't work half the time.
So if your technology isn't working half the time, not to act as the devil's advocate, it could be true for people who want to present. Am I correct?
That's possible, but don't take my opinion only.
I know. I'm just concerned that,
yeah.
And I'll get into it in my debate. I just wanted to see if we could have a hybrid. That if someone still wanted to come, they still can. But if this passes, they will not be allowed to be present in the room. That's all I need is for clarification. Thank you.
Okay. I guess I would just follow up, Mr. City Manager. I've been on a number of Teams meetings with my Surface Pro, and I think it was 2 weeks ago I was trying to participate in an agenda review committee meeting. My technology wouldn't work. I've sometimes been on other meetings with MS Teams, and again, I try to speak and I can't be heard or comment. So my technology personally isn't reliable, and with the Surface Pros, I think I'm not the only one whose computer has frozen up in a number of times during these conversations. So it limits our effectiveness during the meeting. So I would have some concerns. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. In light of the conversation we had earlier today around the alternative advertising bylaw, and I know a desire for the public to be participating in public hearings, I'm just wondering if there would be a wisdom to striking public hearings from that list, at least until we can figure out something else. And it's about, again, meeting community need. Meetings of council, do you know if somebody needs to come and do a presentation? That can be accommodated. Our clerk staff can be dealing one-on-one with groups that are requiring presentations, access to teams and things of that nature. SPCs, we've again got a structure in place, boards, committees, commissions, and things of that nature. But the public hearings are in many senses the wild card because they are public. And as I had stated earlier today, and I know as Councillor Parker has raised, we have a diversity in access to technology. So is there a wisdom? I recognize the public hearings don't happen as often. They are unscheduled in the sense of they arise when the need is there. But I'm just throwing it out perhaps for my colleagues at the moment. or maybe by process, I should just make the amendment that we strike public hearings from the list until we can actually come up with the hybrid that we're looking at. Recognize what we need to be doing right now for everything else, but your microphone is on, Councillor Morrow, or Councillor Miyashiro, thank you. But recognizing that we have some significant hearings coming up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Can somebody maybe help me? Oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. How our current process works, I've seen some disturbing interactions in council chambers. I've seen people come in without masks en masse. I've seen people interacting, not following rules, and that it's always been a concern to me. Not for myself, because I've taken it upon myself to be remote. But it is a concern that when we say, oh, yep, everyone come in, and we ensure that staff has to be there to manage that, but there doesn't seem to be any enforcement or any interest in enforcing people to actually abide by public health orders. So I'm just curious, if we do say, yeah, we'll make allowances, and that means us putting staff in harm's way. It'd be different if it was council saying, yeah, we'll show up and we'll man the doors and we'll do this, since we're the ones voting on it. My concern is that we're putting staff out there without a lot of enforcement on the guidelines. So I'm curious how it works now, and how, if we did make exceptions, how that would work.
I'll respond to that, Councillor Carlson. The first thing I would throw out in response to some other comments is this is obviously a trade-off between public health, both in terms of citizens coming to the council chambers, to council and staff as well. So it's a balance between public health and ensuring that the system of government continues. And I completely get the concerns around public access for those who might not have access to the technology, or the technological problems that a number of us are experiencing, as the Mayor mentioned. From a staff perspective, I would share the same observations, Councillor Carlson, in terms of public interaction at times here in recent weeks and over the last few months. It can be challenging to rely on individuals to follow the health guidelines. And personally, I'm loath to put any staff member in the position of enforcement. We see how bad that goes quickly sometimes. So again, my intent from a staff perspective moving forward, again, as this continues to evolve, is to not have staff participate in any of the in person in any of the meetings indicated here. However, we'll obviously make allowances for whatever decisions council makes, and with respect to public hearings, we'll work our way through those.
Thank you.
Acting Mayor Higgin.
I'm actually in for debate.
Okay. Okay, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, would you like to open debate?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you for making the comments, everyone. This is all about following public health orders and protecting the staff. None of us show up there except for Mayor Spearman. The staff are the ones that are in council chambers, and they're providing the infrastructure for the meetings and making sure that we can actually have a meeting. But what we're saying, it's okay that they have to be in the room with the public. And as we've seen, that people come in and they take their mask off when they're at the podium because they think that's okay. The city manager said he doesn't believe it's up to the staff members to enforce the public health orders. So now we have staff in the room, we have public that doesn't feel like wearing masks, and we're exposing our own staff to possible infection. We can let people phone in. Here's the technology that almost every single person in Lethbridge that would even care to be a part of any of our discussions has a telephone. And most of the people that we're talking about not being able to access the internet will have a landline. So it's not just cell phone, it's landline as well. And I think that we need to do the right thing for the people that work for the city of Lethbridge and still get the public input that we need to make some decisions and move forward with this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I see this in a very different way. If we follow the public health guidelines that are set out, we are allowed to have citizens in chambers with limited quantities. So if we're following the public health guidelines, and again, we need to trust our citizens. We need to trust that they're going to come in and they're going to follow those guidelines. Right now, it's sounding like we're not trusting them, and that we don't think they're going to do what is right. And I'm shocked actually that I'm hearing this. Now, I understand with staff, if staff want to be away, there's going to be a couple that will need to do the technology, but as far as anyone else can be in remote, and if they follow those health guidelines and they themselves are keeping distance, wearing a mask, etc., I'm shocked actually we having to discuss this, and I'm thinking to future conversations that we're going to have when it comes to public hearings, and I think we're just trying to shut out the citizens to voice their concerns, their opinions, their views on what's going to be presented before us, and for that reason I am completely against this, and I will be voting against it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parker.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate that the city manager is bringing this forward as our CAO, because he's not here to endorse. I think he's just bringing a possible opportunity for us, and now it's our job to bring the political values to the table. First and foremost, I think citizens are doing a pretty damn good job in this community in following protocols. And we did have a situation months ago where there was a protest, so I'm not going to paint everyone with the same brush. I think if a person wants to come to City Hall and to have their case heard for or against, or be part of the process of democracy, they have all the right to come to their City Hall. Now, there are opportunities if you want to use the phone, you want to use Teams. I know our city clerk's department will work with whatever way to help people get their voice heard. But I don't think that we should be saying, you can't come when we still come. And I'm not to knock with the mayor, and I appreciate the mayor being there. But if we were to follow these rules, technically no one should be in that room if we cared about public safety. Each and every one of our staff members goes grocery shopping. Everyone goes to the mall. Everyone goes and does their daily things, and they do it through proper safety distancing and wearing the mask. They follow proper health protocol. And so I think there would be quite a bit of overkill if we went this next step and not allowing people to come. You know what? I could come and sit right beside Bonnie or sit in council chambers, and I have all the right and legality to do it, so long as I follow proper safety health measures. But I'm going by the recommendation of the province that if you can, stay home. And most people have stayed home. But I do believe that we should not allow people, if they do want to come speak and look the mayor face to face, or members of council, even though most of us won't be there, people have a sense of satisfaction when they come down to City Hall to have their voice heard. We've done an amazing job so far, thanks to our city clerk's department, in facilitating people when they do want to speak. And I know that they will continue doing that forward. And for that reason alone, I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Kaufman.
No, thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Okay, I struggle with it. I know that there are people with strong views, and I know that the mask bylaw, for example, is going to be considered again in the near future. And we can't control individual behaviors, and we have had people come in and flagrantly not obey our rules. When we asked for enforcement, the enforcement didn't come. And that's a challenge. And I guess I have no regrets. When that occurred the last time, I left the chambers. Several councillors left the chambers. Anybody who felt that people were basically disregarding the health of others, we don't need to put ourselves and we don't need to put our employees in the way of those people, should they choose to. So I'm understanding the health piece of it for sure. I just, my concerns, as I have expressed, are the reliability of the technology and the ability to participate are things that I don't think we've resolved completely in order to make this happen. So with that, I am on the fence. I think until we get the technology right and we unfailingly have people participating on a regular basis, I don't think I can support it. I struggle to conduct the meetings when we can't communicate with people or connect with them. So I would be happy to look at it when the technology is more reliable. Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. First of all, procedural concern. We probably should divide this because the first section is about in-camera conferences or closed meeting conferences. Okay. And then this is an instructional. So there should probably be a motion to divide, which I will make.
Thank you. Okay, can we vote on the motion to divide?
Seconded by Carlson.
Seconded by Carlson. Thank you.
Worship, I'm just not clear. What are we dividing? What
You're
parts?
dividing first paragraph from second paragraph on 10.4. And voting on them separately. Okay. So, all in favor of the motion to divide? Are any opposed? There are none. Okay, first paragraph. Be it resolved that Council direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to COVID-19 protocols remain confidential pursuant to sections 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Kaufman? Or no, it's divided. Originally it was Councillor Miyashiro. So Councillor Miyashiro or Deputy Mayor?
If there's no questions, are there questions?
Are there any questions on paragraph 1, standing on its own as I see none?
Is there any debate?
I see none.
Call the question, please.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And now, second paragraph, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Further be it resolved that in light of COVID-19 and an ongoing review of our practices, that all meetings of council, public hearings, standing policy committees and boards, committees of council move from in-person public participation to electronic participation using a variety of options similar to many other municipalities until such time that the current public health order of the Chief Medical Officer of Health regarding mandatory work from home is no longer in effect. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro?
I think we can start with questions, and we could probably continue with the questions that were asked originally.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Kaufman?
No, sorry, hadn't lowered my hand from before.
Okay. Anybody else with questions? There are no further questions. We'll move to debate.
Then we can, carry on with debate.
Okay. Would you like to open, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro?
Been done.
Okay. Any other debate on this? Councillor Carlson?
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. I will be supporting the motion. I do realize it may seem a bit drastic to some, but we are under public health orders to work from home wherever possible. And I felt challenges when watching and seeing some of the interactions. As stated, this is, I believe, the city manager and the mover bringing this forward to add a extra layer of protection for our staff who they're not comfortable enforcing. But when council says, yep, come on down to City Hall, come one, come all, and people come in, that's not taking good due care of the staff in our care. And so I will be supporting this. I think there's lots of opportunities for folks to participate at council. They can participate for weeks or months before a council meeting or a public hearing or anything by writing to us, by phoning us. But there are also the opportunities for folks to participate at the meetings. They can communicate with the city clerks, with members of council, and have that form part of either the public hearing or the council meeting, should we so choose. There's lots of opportunities, lots of ways for folks to do it. I can't see it being too great of a challenge. I know if it was me and I really wanted to participate and somebody saying, well, you know, I don't have a computer, surely you have a friend, a family member who can make sure that you have that connection. You've got a phone, you can phone in. So I don't think this will exclude anyone from actually participating, but it is just to the betterment of our staff and the health of our staff. And so I will be supporting this. It's for a short time. Vaccines are on their way. But in the meantime, I want to keep people as safe and as healthy as possible. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Parker?
Are we debating again, or do we have already had our one round of debate? Or what's
Well,
going on here, so I know?
what happened was there was a motion to divide which interrupted the debate, and now we're resuming debate.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to ask for a point of clarification then, because I've already debated, so I want to be respectful to the process. But some points were brought up that I just want to have clarification on. First of all, the term "people are mandatory to work from home." Is that true, Mr. City Manager, that it's mandatory that people work home? Or is it just, if you can, please do?
No, it is mandatory, and but again, it's up to individual organizations to determine what's critical and where they can comply with that and where they can't. So, council has full discretion to say, for example, that public hearings are critical, and for that purpose, we will be present. And when I say we, I mean council, and anybody needs to support that. So the guidance from the province is clear, but they've also given organizations, businesses, levels of government, municipalities, the freedom to decide where that mandatory work from home cannot be achieved because there's an operational reason.
Okay, so what you're saying is everyone who's working at City Hall it's mandatory that it's important and they cannot be working from home, rather they have to be within the building. Am I correct?
That's the approach we're taking, but we're also running into, and again, this is evolving, and it's not, you know, and I appreciate the conversation and debate. It's not black and white. We have technological limitations too, as an organization. We simply lack some of the technology in enough quantities to ensure that everybody's working from home. But our intent, or our approach now has been, if you can, that's where you need to be working from.
Thank you for that clarification. And my second question, for point of clarification through you, Mr. Mayor, is Councillor Carlson said that we can gather information, do all that leading up to a public hearing. People have all the right to. I do recall 2 weeks ago, Mr. Lowen stating that we cannot collect or gather information leading up to a public hearing. Rather, we have to base it on when the public hearing is open and closed. Am I correct on that, Mr. Lowen?
So we had a very similar conversation, and I want to be clear. The decision to receive information is council's and individual councillors. What I'm warning you about and giving you the advice about is, if you choose to accept information outside of those processes, you are putting the decision at risk. To what degree depends on the facts. So the analogy that I will make is, it's my job to tell you that you're on thin ice, and I can give you assessments of how thin that ice is. But at the end of the day, I can't tell you that you can't go on the ice. That's a decision that council must make. And so the legal advice with relation to public hearings is simply this: the safest place to be is making sure that anybody that wants to comment on it has the opportunity to comment on the same information that you have in a public hearing. And that could be a series of public hearings, as we had with other bylaws. On the other hand, if you choose to accept information outside of that process, that decision could be challenged, and ultimately we won't know the outcome of that challenge until, you know, a legal process unfolds.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate your allowing me to ask these questions. My last question to the city manager. Mr. City Manager, since that situation where we did have those people coming in and protesting, have we had any issues and regarding people not complying under the guidelines that not only the province has in place, but the guidelines that we have in place at City Hall?
The reason that we reconsidered this question and whether or not we should be looking at engaging with the public and even ourselves, how we conduct business and meetings, and why we're moving and have moved on the staff level largely to everything being remote, is less about individuals not complying and more about following the public health guidance, which is really now to limit contact to the degree possible, which is what's behind that work from home. So I'm not saying that and I agree, people in the community are complying and people in the community are doing well. But putting people in the same room, whether or not they're complying with physical distance and masking, still entails some risk. And I, to be honest, even in the workspace for the last number of months, every day I've seen cases where you can't physically distance, or you're in a meeting and somebody takes a mask off to speak, and that's happened here. So this is in no way saying that the public is not complying. This is not about the public's behavior. This is about us sitting back and saying, in light of one encounter we've had, thinking about what's the right way to do business and trying to balance the work of the organization and public health. That's all that this is about.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. This is a very interesting debate. Reminds me back in March when we were debating whether or not to continue council meetings during the pandemic. And it's the same things that we're trying to balance. Public safety, the safety of staff, the safety of everyone who is in council chambers, and doing our work, ensuring that people can be heard at public hearings, ensuring that the work of council gets done. And this isn't an easy balance to find during a pandemic. How do we balance the needs of health and the needs of continuing with government? In this case, I am going to lean a little bit more to ensuring that government can do its work, because we have to continue doing that and ensuring the public attends. I have no doubt at all that our city clerk's department and everyone else is working as hard as possible to find ways that the public can participate remotely, and that through all of our communication, through all of our messaging, we need to ask people, if you want to speak at a public hearing, if you want to speak to an SBC or council, please do it remotely. But it is the word all meetings in here that is the sticking point for me. And for that reason, I will be voting against this. While I want to encourage as many people as possible, I just cannot quite get to the side of not having people included in public conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Just in response to a question asked by my colleague about public hearings, I just need clarity maybe from Mr. Lowen. We can't make decisions based on information that isn't heard at a public hearing, correct?
If that was in the evidentiary record before a court, that decision might very well be overturned, yes.
Correct. But if I get 100 emails, or let's just say one email from Bill Smith, and it says XYZ, and I get this outside of a public hearing, but before the public hearing. And during the public hearing, I say, I've gotten emails from Bill Smith, and they say that they felt blah, 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 and I make it plain that I've heard this, and that's part of my reasoning. That becomes part of the public hearing, correct? You don't have to be actually present and say, I, Bill Smith, state this. if they've sent me an email and I say, I got this email from Bill Smith who says blah, 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 and I agree with it, so that's how I'm basing my decision. That becomes part of the public hearing, correct? Or am I completely out to lunch?
I think to be completely part of the public hearing, you would have to ensure that that email that you referred to verbally was also part of the public record and in the agenda and the minutes of the public hearing.
Okay, so it could be added to the record then, at a public hearing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further debate? I'll ask Deputy Mayor Miyashiro to close. Oh, Councillor Campbell, go ahead.
Just, you know, these are trying times. We've all been through these trying times. But safety for me is paramount. We want to get there. We want to get to the end. I keep on seeing commercials about, you know, that, you know, where it's the grizzly is still out there. We still have to, to beat the grizzly, we have to stay away from the grizzly. So I think staying away, still being able to have the ability to talk to people in other ways is still going to get the job done. And again, I really feel for the staff as well, and I think that safety is paramount. So I will be supporting this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thanks to my colleagues for voicing their opinions on this matter. I think I stated it earlier that this is also not just, this isn't about preventing the public from doing anything. We have numerous options for the public to engage with council. We have numerous options for the public to get their opinions across to council. But we only have one way to protect our staff. And, you know, if this doesn't pass, I would hope that everybody that votes against it shows up in council chambers when we have a public hearing, because I won't be. There are people that I have to work with and things that I need to do that I do not want to be engaged with the public if I don't have to be. And I think we just need to think about that for a second. What is more important? Is it more important for our health? Is it more important for us to protect the staff for the city of Lethbridge? Or is it more important for us to be in council chambers for, you know, a dozen, 10, 12, 14 people to show up, most of whom will take their mask off when they approach the podium? I just think this discussion we're having today is an okay discussion. I just think we're beating this to death a little bit, and I think we need to do the right thing as per the stay-at-home order and to protect our staff. So on that finish, I will call the question.
Okay, question has been called. I'll ask our city clerk to do a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Campbell.
In favor.
Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor.
Councillor Croson.
Opposed.
Councillor Parker. Councillor Parker.
Madam Clerk, I noticed that Ryan left the meeting and then joined the meeting, and now I think he's trying to join the meeting from his son's computer because Gage Parker is joining, so he may be having some issues.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
In favor.
Mayor Spearman.
Opposed.
Councillor Parker. 4-3.
He just commented he's trying to log in again.
4-3 in favor, Your Worship.
Okay, we'll let Councillor Parker log in.
Brian, he says, please wait. He's just trying to log in with technology. Again, technology issue.
He could try his phone.
Just sent him a message here, and he says, "I've disconnected again. Please wait. I'm logging in."
Hey, Blaine, tell him if he can't log in, maybe he should just phone in, because we just need his vote, right?
Sounds good. Got your Okay, with technology here, I do have Ryan on speakerphone here with me, and so if City Clerk, if you wanted to ask.
Councillor Parker, your vote?
Yeah, Madam City Clerk, and I apologize once again, technology. I am opposed to this resolution. Thank you for holding and waiting for me, everyone.
Opposed?
Yes.
4-4, tie vote, lost.
Great. I'll see you all at the next public hearing.
Hey. I have a resolution from Councillor Parker that we do now adjourn the regular meeting of City Council until Tuesday, February the 9th, 2021. Councillor Parker?
He's not there.
Councillor Parker, it's the motion to adjourn.
Yes, please. Thank you, and I apologize once again.
Yeah. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.